What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Battles of the American Civil War. And speaking of moving on, we are moving on to episode 4 and still on that march towards the first Battle of Bull Run or Battle of Manassas, whatever you want to, whatever side you're on, whatever you want to call it. Last week we had 3 different battles, mostly on the water. Nothing happening. Just a pissing contest between everybody firing back and forth. And, yeah, today it's going to be a little bit different because kind of not a major battle, but a minor battle. So some casualties on both sides and some major land fighting. We got 2 battles today. Short one, a Battle of Pig Point, which took place June 5th, 1861. And then kind of a bigger one, a Battle of Big Bethel. Which was June 10th of 1861, which are both going to be Confederate victories at this time. I don't think the Union has won anything up in, well, they won Philippi, where the Confederates ran away at the end.
Right.
You remember? Yeah, this one might be a long one because the Battle of Big Bethel is pretty long, but the Pig Point's not very long. It's going to be short. Done. That's another naval battle in the American Civil War, obviously. June 5th, 1861, the Union gunboat USS Harriet Lane, under Captain John Faunce, was ordered to attack Pig Point, which is in Virginia. But due to shallow water, the shots fell short. Oh, of course. Mm-hmm. And the Union suffered 5 men wounded before withdrawing.
Ooh, got some wounded men.
Wow.
Get some shrapnel on them. 27th of May, 1861, Major General Benjamin Butler, commanding Fort Monroe at the tip of the Virginia Peninsula between the James River and the York River, sent forces 8 miles north to occupy Newport News, Virginia. By May 29th, the Union Army established a camp and battery at Newport News Point that could cover the entrance to the James River Ship Canal. That's what you needed to do. And the mouth of the Nansemond River.
Well, meanwhile, the Confederates established a battery of their own at Pig Point, which was across from the Nansemond River, with guns captured from the Gosport Navy Yard in Norfolk County, which is now part of Portsmouth, Virginia. Isn't it Gosport Navy Yard where they sunk the ships?
Somewhere.
After establishing the Union position at Newport News, Butler wished to move up the Nansemond?
I think it is.
River to capture Suffolk. He had to dispose of the battery at Pig Point to accomplish this objective. So he's like, we're going to have to move up, but this little battery that they got across the river here, yeah, we're going to have to take care of that.
Right. General Butler ordered Captain John Faunce to take the Harriet Lane. He was like, take the Harriet Lane off for a spin, why don't you? Better watch out, though, for those rebels. He's like, take the old Harriet Lane out. One of the boats which had tried to reinforce and resupply Fort Sumter. And he goes, take that one. You know, the one that we tried to supply Fort Sumter with, couldn't get close enough? Take that. And then what I want you to do with it, what do you want me to do with it, boss? I want you to attack the Confederate battery at Pig Point. When? 5th of June, 1861.
Why?
Well, we need to ascertain its strength. Whatever that means. Faunce attacked the battery, but due to shallow water, he had to fire his 30 shots from too great of a distance, obviously. These generals are idiots. They don't know how shallow the water is.
They don't have, like, land surveyors out there. Nobody knew how
shallow
the water was right there.
Basically, the Union for a couple months now has just been going out and just wasting ammo out into the ocean.
Idiots.
Into the rivers. And maybe a couple of them hitting shore or something, but nothing's happening. I mean, I just don't get the stupidity what's going on here.
Yeah, well, neither side is.
Is our armed forces that weak right now? Where's our leaders?
I don't think anybody's trained, dude.
Right, where's our leaders like saying, hey?
Nobody has trained anybody, which we'll see in the Battle of Bull Run anyways. The Confederate defenders, including the Portsmouth Rifle Company, returned fire and wounded 5 of the Union steamers crew. Jeez. From this brief engagement, Faunce determined that the battery was strong. The battery's pretty strong, and considered his mission complete.
Yeah, what?
Oh, that was the whole commission. That was the whole mission. He just needed to go there and see how much they were going to fire on him. Yeah, okay. He withdrew the Harriet Lane from the engagement in the face of the superior Confederate firepower. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, that's why they want to go there to assert the strength of the battery.
A reconnaissance mission, basically.
Maybe they did know. Hey, we're not going to be able to get close enough for them to.
Oh no, they definitely tried to hit them.
Oh.
If they could have, they would have.
Right, it's true. Captain Robert Pegram, commanding the Confederate battery, reported that the Harriet Lane fired 33 shots and inflicted no casualties or damage whatsoever. The Confederates returned fire with 23 shots. A later account stated that the Harriet Lane had disabled a 48-pound cannon at the battery.
Oh, jeez.
5 of the Harriet Lane's crew were wounded by the Confederate gunfire. On that very same day, June 5th, 1861, the USS Quaker City, wow, a bunch of white people on that son of a bitch, captured the...
You in Quaker City, boy.
All right. Captured the Confederate ship General Green up the nearby Virginia Cape.
Bunch of green folk on that ship.
Dang, they got the General Green?
I guess so.
Oh, that's crazy.
The Confederates maintained control of Pig Point and operation of the battery until they abandoned it. At the start of the Peninsula Campaign on March 9th of 1862, Union forces occupied Norfolk and Portsmouth on May 10th and 11th. Yeah, that was the Battle of Pig Point. Not a battle at all.
Wasn't even a battle.
But, hey, it's part of the war.
Yeah,
Moves on to the big guy now. Well, I think this is a Class C battle.
Oh, we got a Class C battle, huh? Mm-hmm. And that is the Battle of Bethel. Big Bethel.
First battle, I believe.
Was one of the earliest land battles of the Civil War. It took place on Virginia Peninsula near Newport News, 10th of June, 1861. Virginia's decision to secede from the Union had been ratified by popular vote on the 23rd of May, and Confederate Colonel, later Major General John B. Magruder. Everybody knows Magruder.
Magruder.
It was sent down to the peninsula to deter any advance on the state capital, which is Richmond, by Union troops. He's like, this is us, man. This needs to be protected. Can you do that, Magruder? He's like, I can. John B. Magruder. He was sent down the peninsula to deter any advance on the state capital, Richmond, by Union troops based at the well-defended post of Fort Monroe. There it is.
There it is.
This garrison was commanded by Major General Benjamin Butler, a former Massachusetts lawyer and politician, who established a new camp at nearby Hampton and another at Newport News,
which we just discussed.
Right. Magruder had also established 2 camps within range of the Union lines at Big Bethel and Little Bethel as a lure to draw his opponent into a premature action.
Ooh, premature action. Nobody likes that.
Right. Nobody.
Well, Butler took the bait when he and aide Major Theodore Winthrop devised a plan for a night march followed by a dawn attack to drive the Confederates back from their bases.
Right.
Butler chose not to lead the force in person, for which he was later criticized. I mean, right? Why would you not lead your force?
You always.
The plan proved too complex for his poorly trained subordinates to carry out, especially at night, and his staff had also omitted to communicate the password. So they're like, didn't tell nobody what the passwords were,
right.
And jeez, they were trying to advance without knowledge of the layout or strength of the Confederate positions when a friendly fire incident gave away their own.
Oh my!
Wow! So they fired on, and now the Confederates know where they are. The commander in the field, Massachusetts militia, General Ebenezer Pierce, received most of the blame for the failed operation. Oh my!
Nobody knew what was going on.
Idiots, dude.
And that guy's a general.
It's amazing the Union even held on for a year. The way this shit's going.
Right. The United States Regular Army garrison, under the command of Colonel Justin Dimmick, held Fort Monroe, a nearly impregnable fortress at Old Point Comfort on the southern tip of the Virginia Peninsula between the York River and James River. We already know this.
Yeah, Fort Monroe. It's the first time I heard Fort Monroe.
Right. It empties into Chesapeake Bay. The bay was to the east of the fort, and Hampton Roads was to the south,
where all this Navy action has been taking place these last couple of weeks.
The fort was supported by the Union Navy at Hampton Roads and could be reinforced and resupplied by water without attack by shore batteries or harassment by the nearly non-existent Virginia or Confederate naval forces. Yeah, they I don't know why that little strip right there is just not heavily armored by both sides. I don't get it. The Confederates are like, that's our capital over there. Can you get it? Can you get it?
Can you get it?
The fort was nearly immune from attack from the land, since it could be approached only over a narrow causeway and a narrow isthmus, like a little Panama, like a little canal type deal. Not even canal, right? Like a little, what do they call it? Strait? A strait?
From the land side, it can only be approached only over a narrow causeway and a narrow
isthmus.
Isthmus.
Isthmus. It's like a strait.
Isn't that? Yeah, but it's not water.
No, a strait. Yeah, a strait is water.
Causeway. Yeah, just one like road. Yeah. One way in.
Yeah, it's raised over wet ground. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
It's like a bridge.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Narrow strip of land with sea on either side.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just nothing. And that's the only way to get to it by land. So, yeah, I'd say they was pretty well fortified.
Right. So yeah, they only can get through a little strip of land, and they had massive walls and hundreds of cannons.
Oh.
An inlet called Mill Creek was the body of water that almost cut the fort off from mainland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good spot.
Bet you that never fell throughout the war.
Probably not.
Colonel Dimmick refused to surrender the fort, obviously, and small and poorly equipped Virginia, soon to be Confederate militia forces in the area, had no hope of taking the fort by force, especially after April 20th, when the small Union garrison was reinforced by 2 Massachusetts volunteer regiments. Yeah, within a few days of the Virginia Convention voting to secede. This important fort would provide a base for the blockade of Norfolk, Virginia, and the Chesapeake Bay, and for the recovery of Southeast Virginia and the Virginia Peninsula for the Union.
Yeah, I think the Confederates let them have that. We can't handle. They can't match their Navy power, anyways. I don't understand why they didn't do more Navy work, or maybe they did, because Massachusetts militia forces were ready to respond to President Lincoln's call for volunteers. 2 90-day regiments, the 3rd Massachusetts Militia, commanded by Colonel David W. Wardrop, and the 4th Massachusetts Militia, commanded by Colonel Abner B. Packard, were able to reinforce Fort Monroe's garrison of 415 regulars within 5 days of the president's call.
Jeez.
The 4th Massachusetts was the first to arrive. We're better than the 3rd. We got here first.
And we're named one number after them, but we'll get there before them.
Yes. These reinforcements helped assure that this strong point and base of operations would be fully prepared for defense and saved for the Union. 13th May, 1861. The 1st Regiment Vermont Volunteer Infantry under Colonel J. Wolcott Phelps joined the garrison, and several other volunteer regiments from New York soon followed. So they had a stack full.
Hey, man, that fort was going nowhere.
They're like, this is the one we need to hold.
Plus, that could potentially be used as like a retreat if they needed to go re-up their guys and
over there,
get food and supplies and shit.
Anything they need.
On May 14th, 1861, while Colonel Dimmick was still in command of the garrison, he seized a well just outside the fort in what was then Elizabeth City County, because the fort did not have enough water even for its original small garrison. Oh, here we go. Mm-hmm. So they can't even get water now. I guess they didn't think of that when they were building this fort, huh? His forces also occupied the Mill Creek Bridge, which was needed for access to the peninsula from the fort and the nearby Clark Farm. The fort soon could not hold all of the arriving reinforcements, so Union forces established Camp Troy, soon renamed Camp Hamilton, in honor of an aid to General-in-Chief Winfield Scott, on the Seeger Farm on the Hampton side of the Mill Creek within range of the guns of Fort Monroe.
Then you got to do something, right? If you can get in
so
somewhere.
What are they going to do about this water business here?
We'll find out. Well, Colonel Dimmick remained in the command of the 415 regular Army soldiers. Volunteer Major General Benjamin F. Butler of Massachusetts took command of Fort Monroe and the entire garrison on 23rd May. With continuing reinforcements, Butler could not only retain the Union hold on Fort Monroe, but support the Union blockade of Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
Move up the peninsula and threaten to retake Norfolk, Virginia, and other locations on the south side of Hampton Roads from the Confederates.
Okay, yep. So that's their base, pretty much, right? Forward operating base.
I would say.
On May 27th, General Butler sent a force 8 miles north to occupy the lightly defended adjacent town of Newport News. At Newport News Point, an excellent anchorage for the Union Navy. This force established and significantly fortified Camp Butler and a battery at Newport News Point that could cover the entrance to the James River Ship Canal and the mouth of the Nansemond River. By May 29th, Butler's force, which included the 1st Vermont Infantry, Colonel John A. Bendick's 7th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, which was a regiment of German speakers.
Hey.
The 4th Massachusetts Volunteer
Infantry?
4th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment, Scots Life Guards, and a detachment of U.S. regulars to man military completed the mission.
All right.
So all those guys completed the mission
of
taking over the Newport News.
They need every single one of those.
Right, apparently.
Right. 8th of June, the camp, which was commanded by Colonel Phelps of the 1st Vermont Infantry, also was reinforced by the 9th New Yorker Volunteer Infantry Regiment. Butler also further occupied and expanded Camp Hamilton, started by Colonel Dimmick, the equally lightly defended adjacent town of Hampton, just beyond the confines of the fort, and within range of the guns. We said that already.
That was the other one.
Right. After Colonel Abram Dury of the 5th New York Infantry commanded Camp Hamilton for a week. June 4th, Massachusetts Militia Brigade General Ebenezer Pierce assumed command.
Jeez, dude, there's so much moving pieces here.
Right. Putting in a bunch of people over here.
Major General Robert E. Lee, in charge of Virginia, soon to be Confederate forces, which already were in league with the Confederacy, responded to the growing Union threat from Fort Monroe by sending Colonel John Bankhead Magruder.
Go ahead, Magruder.
For the purposes of defending the southeastern area of the peninsula and pushing Union forces back to the fort.
They need to do that.
Magruder was given the command on May 21st. On May 24th, he established his headquarters at Yorktown, Virginia, and set up his defenses. Soon, his original small Virginia force was increased to about 1,500 men by the inclusion of Colonel Daniel Harvey Hill's 1st North Carolina Volunteer Infantry, Lieutenant Colonel William D. Stewart's 3rd Virginia Infantry, which were called the Wythe Rifles, a cavalry battalion under Major E.B. Montague, and the Richmond Howitzer Artillery Battalion under Major George W. Randolph, grandson of Thomas Jefferson and future Confederate Secretary of War. Jeez, man.
Wow. Got a bunch of people here.
That's just too much.
Well, the South's
now
coming
imagine
back.
this is just a Class C battle, dude.
And South's coming back, though, with some...
South's going to rise again, boy.
All right. June 6th, Colonel Magruder sent Colonel D.H. Hill and the first North Carolina Volunteers and Major Randolph and part of the Richmond Howitzer Battalion with 4 artillery pieces to Big Bethel Church. So Big Bethel Church was within 8 miles of the Union's camps at Newport News and Hampton to establish an advanced position. Yeah, so they sent them to...
they're moving in on them.
Right, they sent them to Big Bethel Church. They're like, this is perfect location right here. When the Confederates arrived at Big Bethel Church, they found it marked with writings on the wall such as "Death to Traitors," which were left by Union soldiers during an earlier visit and which greatly annoyed the Confederates.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you know what? These words annoy me greatly. Hill seized high ground just north of the west branch of the Back River and established a well-fortified camp which crossed the road between Yorktown and Hampton and commanded the bridge over the Back River. On the north side of the river, Hill had his men dig entrenchments, laying out the position in the form of a square. Okay. He had an outlying position guarding an old ford on his left and a redoubt for a howitzer on his right and across the river. He also had some flank protection from heavy woods and marshes. So now, how are the Union not even seeing these guys build up?
Right.
It's only 8 miles. You telling me you don't have like a telescope? Not telescope, but anything?
No, I don't know. 8 miles is a long ways.
And a looking glass?
That's a long ways.
That's not that long if you're looking at a looking glass.
I don't know about 8 miles. Magruder's force also established an outpost at Little Bethel Church about 8 miles from Hampton. The fortified
Big and Little Bethel are both 8 miles?
The fortified position at Big Bethel Church was a short distance further north from Little Bethel Church, along and mainly north of Marsh Creek, a tributary of Back Creek. Okay, who cares?
Right.
The position at Big Bethel Church crossed and blocked the main road between Yorktown and Hampton, and that's actually great. The Magruder's force of almost 1,500 men occupied the position at Big Bethel, while only around 50 cavalrymen manned the outpost at Little Bethel. That's fine.
That's all you need there.
Right. 8th of June, Hill sent detachments to drive Union foraging parties back to the fort. So anybody that's out there looking for anything.
Yeah, they're looking for berries.
Right.
Better
drive them back and tell them that the British are coming and the rebels are coming.
The rebels are coming. You tell that to your captain, boy.
Rebels are coming.
Butler wished to drive the Confederates back from their advanced positions at Little Bethel and Big Bethel because they had begun attacking and harassing his pickets and patrols with squads from these outposts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, duh. I mean, they're attacking and harassing my pickets.
Right. What do you think? You think they're just going to leave them alone?
Right. Threatening his bases outside of Fort Monroe and his lines of communication with them, and standing in the way of his plan to move up the peninsula towards Richmond, which was the new capital. An escaped slave, George Scott, who was working for the Union Army at Fort Monroe, was able to scout the Confederate position at Big Bethel and give a good report to General Butler. Nice. But Butler knew little about the Confederate position at Little Bethel, which he assumed was also a substantial installation manned by a large force.
Yeah, but 50,
wasn't, though.
Yeah, 50 cavalrymen is pretty good.
I mean, they didn't need that many anyways. It was farther south than Big Bethel.
Right. I think they should have had more cavalrymen up top at Big Beth.
Well, there was 1,500 guys. I'm sure there was more than 50 cavalrymen.
Right. And 50 cavalrymen can get up there pretty quick.
Could have been originated from Calvary.
Well, along with his aide, Major Theodore Winthrop, already an accomplished author, Butler devised a plan for a night march and surprise attack on the Confederate position at Little Bethel at dawn. Butler's main objective was Little Bethel, where he expected to find a large Confederate force, but he didn't. Only after Little Bethel was taken would the commander in field proceed to Big Bethel, if he chose to do so.
Only after they captured Little Bethel would they proceed to Big Bethel, apparently.
Right.
On the night of June 9th through 10th, or June 9th, so early morning, June 10th, according to the plan devised by General Butler and Major Winthrop, 3,500 units, 3,500 of them, too. Where soldiers were sent into two columns from Camp Hamilton at Hampton and Camp Butler at Newport News with orders to converge near the Confederate positions at Little Bethel after a night march and launch a surprise attack on the Confederate positions at Little Bethel at dawn. After taking Little Bethel, if the commander of the force chose to do so, he could go on to attack Big Bethel. Why would you not after that?
Right, you'd have to. Wow. The entire force was under the immediate overall command of Brigade General Ebenezer W. Pierce, a Massachusetts militia general of apparent bravery, but no regular army, military school, or other formal military training or combat experience.
Oh, my.
Earlier in the day, 9th of June, Butler had summoned Pierce from Camp Hamilton to Fort Monroe to advise him of the plan, foreshadowing the further difficulties which would arise during the operation. He's like, this is what could happen. We're going in blind. Pierce was too ill to ride his horse and went to the fort by boat.
Well, he was ordered to first send Colonel Abram Dury's 5th New York Volunteer Infantry from Camp Hamilton at Hampton to a point between Little Bethel and Big Bethel, and then, after having cut the road to Big Bethel, to attack the Confederates at Little Bethel. Colonel Frederick Townsend's 3rd New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, with 2 howitzers, was to march from Hampton after the 5th New York Infantry had departed and provide support at Little Bethel.
So they're bringing in reinforcements.
There you go, moving on them.
Right. Meanwhile, Colonel John Phelps, commanding at Newport News, would send detachment from his own 1st Vermont Infantry and Colonel David W. Wardrop's 4th Massachusetts Infantry, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Peter Washburn, to approach Little Bethel from the opposite side. He's like, we're going to come in from this side. Yeah, Washburn would be followed by Colonel Bendick's German-speaking 7th New York Infantry Regiment and 2 artillery pieces manned by regulars from the 2nd U.S. Artillery Regiment, commanded by Lieutenant John Grebel. So the only actual United States regulars is these 2 artillery pieces, manned probably by 2 guys apiece. So 4 regulars from the Army. It's like, we'll send 4 with 3,500. That should do it.
Yeah, regulars, why not? The plan was for this force to meet the 3rd New York Infantry under Townsend at a road junction about 1.5 miles from Little Bethel and form a combined reserve. Pierce and his staff headed for Little Bethel with Townsend's 3rd New York Infantry Regiment. The column from Camp Hamilton was to start at midnight, and that from Newport News a little later, as its line of march would be shorter.
Right. You don't want to get there too soon.
Right. You got to meet up right at the same time.
Right. Well, anticipating possible confusion during a night march by inexperienced troops, Butler ordered the watchword, Boston, to be given to each column, and further ordered that all the troops should wear a white rag or handkerchief on their left arm so that they would recognize each other.
Okay.
Any attacking regiment was supposed to first shout the watchword. They're going to be like, hey, Boston, here we go. Butler's aide and messenger to Newport News Command, Captain Haggerty, forgot to advise Colonel Phelps and Newport News contingent of these precautions. How could you not? Are we good to go? Yeah, you guys are good.
Yeah. Do we need to know anything before we leave? No, I think we're all set.
Yeah, I think you're good, guys.
I think you're all good. See you when you get there.
All right.
Colonel Abram Dury led the 5th New York Volunteer Infantry from their positions at Camp Hamilton, and despite some delays, arrived near Little Bethel about 4 a.m. Part of this regiment under Captain Judson Kilpatrick captured 3 Confederate pickets before dawn and were in position to continue the advance as planned.
Nice.
Before Dury's men could advance close enough to the Confederate positions to open the attack, they heard gunfire behind them. Colonel Bendix's 7th New York Volunteer Infantry had opened fire on Colonel Frederick Townsend's 3rd New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, who were coming up the narrow road from the direction of Hampton to the south. Oh, my gosh. So he heard these guys coming and started firing on him like he was being attacked. Oh, jeez.
Well, they didn't have the Boston.
They didn't have Boston or the white hankies.
All right, how do you say Boston in German? Anyway.
Boston.
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 Boston. Boston.
Boston. Boston.
Boston.
Boston.
So stupid.
Boston.
Ding. Why they didn't put the O there? Just put the N.
Boston.
Boston. Third,
What a bunch of idiots. Dude.
Right. The 3rd New York Infantry was being led down the road by General Pierce and his staff on horseback without an advance guard. You got to have an advance. Why would you not? I don't get it. You always have at least 2 scouts riding the perimeter, right?
You think.
Bendix knew that no cavalry was with the Union force and mistook the 3rd New York for a Confederate cavalry. Oh, so he didn't know that there was
He said he knew there was none.
Yeah, Bendix knew that no cavalry was with the Union force. Oh, okay. And mistook the 3rd New York for a Confederate cavalry regiment. Well,
But they were only an infantry regiment. They weren't even cavalry.
Right. More importantly, the 3rd New York Infantry wore gray uniforms.
Oh, geez.
No. They did. I remember that in the beginning of the war, yeah. With white bands on their arms, such as had been previously on the hats, at least, of Confederates.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, wow. Bendix, who had not been given the watchword of Boston, the instructions on the armbands, and he thought, hey, that's Confederate. We need to get these guys.
I gotta get them.
Fire!
Boston. Oh, jeez. After the attack by Bendix's men, Pierce pulled his force back to the south of the New Market Bridge, a countermarch of about a mile and a half. Jeez.
Oh, jeez.
So they had to march a mile and a half before they can even assess the situation.
That's cray-cray.
And they waited and expected another Confederate attack in a more advantageous position. To the dismay of all, it was soon discovered that Bendix had opened fire with muskets and an artillery piece on the 3rd New York Infantry and the commanding general's party, wounding 21 men, 2 mortally, and causing dozens of other men to flee the field.
Oh, my goodness.
Jeez, not only did they do that, he just proved that a bunch of pussies are in the army.
Right.
Holy shit, dude.
Wow. At this time, the colonels of various regiments, in particular with Duray and Washburn, advised Pierce to call off this operation. He's like, you screwed
it up,
this
man.
is ridiculous. However, Butler's aides, Major Winthrop and Captain Haggerty, urged Pierce to move forward. He's like, don't let this deter you. Keep the line. Keep the line, boys. And so Pierce was like, I will do this. I will continue. At least 40 men of the 3rd New York Infantry had fled back to the Fort Hampton, where they reported the regiments were being cut to pieces by a large Confederate force. They knew they were coming.
Fake news.
Right. They knew we were coming. I don't know.
Well, they probably were cut to pieces. 21 people? That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wounded. Mm-hmm. Before awaiting a request for their reinforcement, Colonel William H. Allen then headed north with the 1st New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment. There's got to be a shorter way to saying that.
Right.
The 1st New York VIR to help Townsend's regiment. Pierce also soon sent a message back to Hampton for the 2nd New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment under Colonel Joseph B. Carr. He said, we need you up in this area. You need to get up here, Colonel B. Carr. They were ordered to stop at the New Market Bridge and ultimately acted as a rear guard.
Okay, so, they're thinking, what if happens if we can't let them advance any forward than this, so let's stock up this little part. They're gonna let Bethel go right now, if that's the case.
Well, if they're getting attacked already. Oh.
Right. We need to strengthen up this part where we're good, where we're actually got somewhat of an organization. Jeez, Boston. Come on, guys. It's not that hard. Jeez. Thinking they had been cut off when they heard the gunfire from the roadblock to Hampton behind them, Durey's men of the 5th New York Infantry withdrew from their advanced position and headed south to the sound of the guns, as did the other Union troops from the Vermont and Massachusetts, under Lieutenant Colonel Washburn. Those troops were approaching Little Bethel in front of the site of the incident. They're like, well, look, we're right in front of this shit. The Union forces had lost the element of surprise for their attack and delayed the timing of it as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the friendly fire incident alerted the Confederates at Little Bethel as well as Magruder's main force of the Union's movement. Upon approach of the Union force and the sound of the gunfire, the approximately 50 Confederates manning the outposts at Little Bethel abandoned that position and fell back to their entrenchments behind Marsh Creek.
That's right.
The branch of the Back River near Big Bethel Church. So they're like, yeah, we're ready for you now.
Nice. As it turned out, though, only this small group was stationed at Little Bethel, not the large force, actually, that we already know. Gordon, in discussing the mistakes of the Union commanders in the operation, says, but behind all this was the most serious mistake of all, a mistake in Butler's plan. The Confederates had no outpost of strength in Little Bethel, and the scheme to surround and capture it was an attack on a man of straw. It was just ridiculous.
Straw man.
Right.
He says Butler could have snuck the road, or could have struck the road to Yorktown 3 miles north of Big Bethel and compelled Magruder to withdraw to Yorktown without firing a shot.
Single shot.
The 5th New York Infantry had again been sent by Pierce as the lead in regiment. Finding the Confederates were in flight from Little Bethel, the 5th New York Infantry burned the church at Little Bethel so the Confederates could not use it as an outpost. Also set fire to the homes of several secessionists. Oh, jeez.
Yep.
The Union force then continued toward Big Bethel. They're like, you know what? We're on now. Coming towards you.
This is only the beginning of the ruthlessness of both armies. Union forces and Confederate forces did some terrible things to little townspeople, man. It's ridiculous. But by chance, Magruder had started a large part of his force toward Hampton to launch a surprise attack of his own on the Union forces. Wow. After hearing the gunfire and being alerted by an elderly local lady that a Union force was only a few hundred yards down the road. Dang, just right down the road. I mean, that's 2 football fields.
Right.
Magruder hurried his men back to his fortifications at Big Bethel. Go back. The Confederates were now fully alerted to Union Army movement and were able to get back into position well before Pierce's men arrived at Big Bethel.
They're like sitting ducks when they come up then.
Oh, my.
Almost the entire Confederate force was now behind earthworks and north of Marsh Creek. The exception was that some of the 3rd Virginia Infantry were in an open field to the south of the branch to protect a howitzer position, which was intended to block the main Yorktown-Hampton road.
Yep. Gotta do that.
These men hurriedly tried to entrench and find other cover, such as Old Mill Dam, and the Union force approached.
Right. Anything that you can cover yourself with.
Yeah, man, get in a little trench real quick.
Oh, jeez. The Confederate force consisted of the same units that Magruder had sent to Big Bethel a few days earlier. Colonel D. H. Hill's 1st North Carolina Infantry, about 800 men. 3 companies of Lieutenant Colonel William D. Stewart's 3rd Virginia Infantry, 208 men. A cavalry battalion of about 100. Dang, nice. Under Major E.B. Montague, or Montague, whatever you want to say. I think it's Montague.
It's Montague.
And the Richmond Howitzer Artillery Battalion of 150 men under Major George W. Randolph.
All right.
So the Confederate forces got themselves about a G right there.
15 hundo about.
15, yeah, 15.
Having determined to continue to Big Bethel without knowledge of the layout or strength of the Confederate positions, Pierce sent Dury's 5th New York Infantry out first. He was like, you guys go take this one for the team.
Right.
Captain Kilpatrick, along with Captain Charles G. Bartlett and
Kilpatrick.
Kilpatrick. I thought that was weird. Kilpatrick. Captain Kilpatrick. There we go. Kilpatrick.
Boston.
That's how you say it in German. Kilpatrick.
Kilpatrick.
Along with Captain Charles G. Bartlett and skirmishers were sent forward to scout the Confederate position. They returned to the main body of the Union force and, after observation and talking to a black man and a local woman as well, told the officers in command that the Confederates had between 3,000 and 5,000 men and 30 pieces of artillery.
Oh,
clearly,
my.
they were lying to them.
Yeah, but that could set up their demise because the Union forces was like, all right, we need about 8,000 men. Ooh.
Yeah, they were probably obviously lying to them to scare them not to go
Right.
engage.
And wait. Well, the Confederate forces only had about 14 to 15 hundo, 5 artillery pieces, but Kilpatrick accurately reported that their position was well fortified, which it was. If the Union forces had not done enough already to give up their plan and position, Kilpatrick gave notice of the arrival of the Union force at Big Bethel by shooting at Confederate scouts and pickets.
Idiots.
Right, so Confederates were like, these guys are dumb.
Stupid.
As the Union force came up to the field, they could not see the Confederates behind their fortifications, but the Confederates also did not have a good view of the Union forces because of the shade from the woods. Wow. And small buildings, so that's just crazy.
That just sounds like a terrible spot.
Right.
However, they could see the bayonets and flag of a Union force about a half mile to the left.
That's all you need to see is the flag.
Major Randolph, commanding the Howitzer Battalion, fired a shot at this column, which ricocheted through the Union line and killed a soldier standing next to Colonel Bendix. Aw.
Oh, no.
He was like, Boston. The two forces then began an intermittent fight that began at 9 a.m. and lasted until 1:30 p.m.
Dang.
After the initial artillery shot, Bendix's men began to scatter into the trees for protection.
So they're all over
Can
the
you imagine
place.
that? These guys are in the building,
Right.
and then they're just shooting out in the woods.
Right.
Oh, crap.
Man, that's crazy. The 5th New York Infantry under Colonel Dury charged the left of the forward Confederate position with the apparent ultimate intent of crossing the stream and turning the Confederate flank, but they were quickly discouraged and turned back by heavy Confederate fire. It's hard to cross water, man, and be quiet. Lieutenant Grebel came up the road to place his 3 guns where he and his small detachment of regulars from the 2nd U.S. Artillery could return fire, which they did, but with little effect.
Always a little effect with the Union, isn't it? Well, Pierce then positioned the 5th New York, 7th New York, and the Massachusetts and Vermont companies to the right of the Hampton Road, and the 3rd New York and 1st New York to the left of the road.
Okay.
He would launch piecemeal attacks from these positions. Grable continued to fire at the Confederate positions while Pierce arranged his force and gave them some time to rest. So now he's giving them time to rest, so...
Right. Union skirmishers went forward to try to determine the strength of the Confederate position. Most were driven back immediately. 2 companies from the 5th New York, led by Captain Kilpatrick and Captain Butler, the general's nephew, advanced across open field with only a few trees, a shed, and a house for cover. Now they're in open. An artillery shot went through the house and killed one of the men.
Damn.
Around noon, 3rd New York Infantry, led by Colonel Townsend, came forward to the skirmishers' position.
When they tried to attack forward Confederate position but could advance only to within 500 feet before being forced to lay down due to the heavy Confederate fire.
Ooh-wee.
Townsend feared he was being flanked and began to withdraw just as the Confederate howitzer facing his position broke.
Uh-oh.
And the Confederate commander in the redoubt, Colonel William D. Stewart, pulled his 200 men of the 3rd Virginia Infantry back to a hill near the church.
Okay.
So now their big old gun broke, and they're like,
All right, we got to pull
"Well,
back,
we got to go back."
which is probably actually a good thing. Stewart also feared he was being flanked. Part of the 5th New York Infantry, which was attacking alongside the 3rd New York, temporarily seized this position but were unable to hold it. Townsend had nothing to fear from the men on his left because they were only a company of his own regiment who had become separated from the main body. By the time this was discovered, Townsend had pulled back.
Oh, geez. So now I didn't even know that those guys were his guys.
Right. Magruder did not want to give up the advantage's forward position and sent Stewart back with another howitzer and reinforcements from the 1st North Carolina. Jeez, oh Pete.
This Confederate move and Townsend's retreat left the 5th New York unsupported, and they had to withdraw from their captured position as well.
Right.
Oh, geez. Renewed fire from the regained Confederate position ensured that neither Townsend nor Dury would move forward against this position again.
Couldn't.
Meanwhile, Kilpatrick was trying to lead part of the 5th New York around the Confederates from the right, but they came under heavy fire.
It's not happening. These guys got you surrounded. As men were following, Lieutenant Colonel Warren came forward on a white mule. Wow. And began to lead the men toward
a white mule.
Right. And began to lead the men toward a ford through the creek, about 3/4 of a mile from the main road to Hampton.
All right.
A platoon guarding the ford was outnumbered by the Union forces and retreated as they approached. Magruder ordered Captain W.H. Worth forward with his howitzer company. Worth hurried to the ford and arrived before the 5th New York Infantry under Dury and Kilpatrick.
Worth drove them off from the ford with a howitzer shot, but they continued to fight from the wood line. Grape shot tore the rectangle off Colonel Dury's left shoulder. Oh, jeez. Grape shot, is that bird shot?
Right.
Pretty much, right?
Sure.
Wounded Captain Kilpatrick in the thigh and killed a soldier behind them.
Oh, no.
The 5th New York Infantry was exhausted from being the first unit on the march and from heavy action in the day's fighting, so the unit was pulled back.
All right.
Kilpatrick, who was badly wounded by the shot through his thigh, had to be rescued and carried away by Captain Winslow at the very end of the battle after his regiment had withdrawn. Otherwise, he would have fallen into Confederate hands.
Ooh.
Some shit about to happen here.
Well, the 5th New York was replaced for one last assault on the Union right by Major Theodore Winthrop. So the Union's like, we gotta try to get this right side for some reason. I think this is the spot.
One last charge,
Right.
guys.
Who was also an officer of the 7th New York, but was serving on the staff of General Pierce, having been detailed from General Butler's staff since he helped Butler plan the attack.
Okay.
Winthrop led a detachment of troops from the 5th, the 5th New York, 1st Vermont, and the 4th Massachusetts. So,
Though also very tired from the night march and increasingly hot day, Winthrop and his force also attempted to turn the Confederate left flank from the Union right.
right.
Unlike the earlier unsuccessful Union attempts to cross the creek, Winthrop and his men crossed the creek uncontested because they tied their white cloths around their hats and pretended to be part of the Confederate force. Remember, these are the guys in gray.
All right.
Then they cheered and ran forward somewhat prematurely, giving away their identity.
Idiots. 2 companies of the 1st North Carolina then turned to face them, and their fire turned the Union force back with several casualties. One was Major Winthrop, who had jumped onto a log and yelled, "Come on, boys! One charge and the day is ours!"
Jeez.
These were his last words as he sustained a bullet through his heart while his men fled back across the creek.
Oh, jeez, they saw him die, and they were like, nope.
It's not ours today, bud. It's not yours. After the battle, Colonel Hill praised Winthrop's courage while disparaging the efforts of the rest of the Union soldiers. It's like, you despicable.
Rightfully, fucking...
Right.
They really found out how much pansies they had in their armies at this point, didn't they?
Right.
Advanced Union skirmishers continued to fire at the Confederate positions from the house on the field and other outbuildings on the south side of the creek. Colonel Hill asked 4 volunteers to go forward and burn the house.
Oh.
Fire from across the main road stopped them, and they dove to the ground. One of them, Private Henry Lawson Wyatt, had been killed.
Oh, no.
The others were called back, and soon Major Randolph was able to destroy the house with artillery fire. Lieutenant Grebel, whose guns had been hidden by the house, continued to fire and expose his position.
Oh, no.
Jeez.
By this time, the battle was ending, and Pierce ordered all of his force to retire. It was clear that the Confederate position was too strong and his troops were too exhausted to continue and had costly effects on his people. Moited. Ridiculous. He lost all those guys off an ill-prepared plan. And he kept on going. After it was botched from the beginning.
After people suggested, you probably shouldn't do this.
Right. Lieutenant John Trout Grebel refused to pull back, and he stayed behind. This effort cost him his life as the Confederate artillery concentrated on his position, and he was struck in the head. Wow, by a cannonball.
Jeez. In the back of the head.
Well, he was like, "It's time to go."
I think it took off his head.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, I did murder.
It had to have, dude.
Did something.
It's a cannonball hitting you in the back of the head.
All right.
Unless, I don't know, because cannonballs sometimes were like that small too, so.
Yeah, it was a small one. Probably like an 8-pounder or whatever. Wow. Definitely
Blood force trauma there.
Right.
Jeez. When they received word of Grebel's death, Lieutenant Colonel Warren, Captain Wilson, and 5 of their men rushed back to recover his body before they left the field. Grebel was the first graduate of West Point and the first U.S. regular Army officer killed in the war.
Oh, no.
After littering the road back to Fort Monroe with coats and equipment on a very hot afternoon, the Union troops arrived back at Fort Monroe about 5 p.m. About 100 Confederate cavalry pursued the Union force but could not mount an attack and pulled back as they approached Hampton because the Union force had pulled up to the New Market Bridge over the southern branch of the river to thwart the Confederate pursuit.
Right, there wasn't. You guys
They were like,
didn't have
we're
enough.
not going close to that fort. That's for
Right.
sure.
It's time to take your chances and get the dice to the next color. You don't want to spread your army too thin there, guys. Total Federal casualties at the Battle of Big Bethel and the friendly fire incident which preceded it were 76, including 18 killed, 53 wounded, and 5 missing.
Jeez.
Union casualties by regiment as followed. Staff, 1 killed, Winthrop. 4th Massachusetts, 1 killed. 1st New York, 1 killed. 2nd New York, 2 killed. 1 wounded. 3rd New York, 2 killed, 27 wounded or missing.
Oh, jeez.
5th New York,
3rd
6.
New York, that's the one that got fired on by
Right.
a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Friendly fire.
5th New York, 6 killed, 13 wounded. 7th New York, 3 killed, 7 wounded, 2 missing. 1st Vermont, 2 killed, 3 wounded, 1 missing. 2nd U.S. Artillery, 1 killed, and that was Grebel.
So every regiment they had there got somebody killed. Union forces attempted no further advance on the Virginia Peninsula until the Peninsula Campaign of 1862. However, Butler did send an expedition up the Back River with naval support on June 24th, which destroyed 14 transports and several small boats which had supplies for the Confederate forces.
Okay.
Both sides generally continued to hold and improve their positions and works until the Peninsula Campaign began. Butler soon had to return many of his men to Washington in order to reinforce the defeated Union force after the first Battle of Bull Run.
Ooh.
Yeah, because they were afraid. It was only, 90 miles from Washington or something?
Yeah, it's not far.
For fear of the security of the capital ran high after that first Battle of Bull Run.
And that was a battle. While Butler continued to maintain the camp at Newport News, he had to abandon the camp at Hampton for lack of men. When Magruder discovered this, August 7, 1861, a Confederate force burned Hampton so it could no longer be used to shelter runaway slaves.
Oh, jeez.
Butler did not attempt to shell the Confederates from the fort for fear he would be blamed, at least in part, for the burning of the town due to cannon fire.
Oh, jeez. Why would he care after that?
Right.
They're trying to burn it.
Right.
What an idiot. Butler was criticized for the debacle at Big Bethel, which he should have, including his decision not to lead the operation in person.
Mm-hmm.
His appointment as Major General of Volunteers was confirmed by the U.S. Senate by only 2 votes.
Oh, jeez.
Most of the criticism fell on the Massachusetts Militia General Ebenezer Pierce.
Oh,
Yes.
Pierce, yeah. Should have got a lot of...
Many of the men even wrote to newspapers and others to condemn Pierce's handling of the operation.
Right.
Lack of coordination of forces, sporadic efforts at fighting, wasting of time, and leaving too much discretion to subordinates.
Right.
Right. Like, oh, you guys decide it.
Right.
Even Butler spoke of Pierce's shortcomings in handling the matter, although in more restrained language than he was reported to have used in private.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this Pierce guy freaked everything up. Well,
Yeah.
started with Butler, but I mean...
Well, they started off with a bunch of idiots. Still, I think at this point, the Union is not taking as serious as the Confederates are right now.
I don't think they're taking serious. They just don't know how.
All right.
Apparently, geez, I would have hated for us to get invaded by another country at this point.
Well, yeah, but a lot of our best military were fighting for Confederates. The generals.
I don't know about that.
The smart guys.
Because these aren't even none of our major armies.
Not yet.
These guys that are
Right.
for the Union right here.
Yeah, so they're just picking idiots to run little tiny stuff.
They're just sending the lower guys in right now. Like, hey, see if you guys
See
can
how it
take
goes.
care of these guys.
See if you guys take care of it first, and then we'll come in. Anyway, in the early stages of the war, uniforms had not been standardized, and some Union units wore some items of clothing which were gray. Though gray had also begun to be adopted by the Confederates.
Mm-hmm. Even Confederates didn't have all gray.
Right. Sometimes they wore blue. Sometimes they wore their overalls or whatever they had on. William Y.W. Ripley, a company
Believe
commander.
it or not.
Right. A company commander in the 1st Vermont, who later received the Medal of Honor for heroism at the Battle of Malvern Hill while fighting with the 1st United States sharpshooters.
Oh, shit.
Right. Said a primary lesson for Union Army's leaders was that the gray overcoats and soft hats had to
Gotta go.
He was like, unless you guys want your own people to keep on getting shot by each other.
By each other. The Confederates suffered only 1 killed and 7 wounded during the Battle of Big Bethel. Many authors have stated that Private Henry L. Wyatt of the 1st North Carolina Volunteers, which later became the 11th North Carolina Infantry Regiment, the only Confederate soldier killed in the battle, was also the first Confederate soldier killed in combat in the whole war.
So far.
So far.
Wow.
First, right? Not so far. He can only have one first, man. This is only correct to the extent a distinction is made between the first officer killed, which was John Quincy Marr at the Fairfax Courthouse on June 1st, and the first enlisted man killed, which Private Wyatt appears to have been.
Right. He was the first enlisted man.
Right.
Okay. Well, so I guess you can count that.
Yeah, but the Fairfax Courthouse wasn't a battle.
Yeah,
We
you can't
established
count
that already
right.
anyways.
Major Winthrop and several other Union dead were buried on the field by the Confederates.
Oh, that's
Of course, man.
they're still their brethren, right?
Right. Soon thereafter, Magruder granted a request by Winthrop's brother and Union officers under a flag of truce to recover Winthrop's body. They returned the body on the field with respectful escort. Okay. Major Randolph's artillery and Colonel D.H. Hill's 1st North Carolina were commended by Magruder for their actions.
That's good. Good for them. We'll see how long that lasts.
All right.
Within hours of the battle, Magruder withdrew his forces to Yorktown, where he established a line protected by the Warwick River.
Obviously.
Magruder feared another larger and better planned Union attack on his position and felt he should maintain his defense at Yorktown and along the river. The press in the Confederate States in particular made the Confederate victory appear to be much more momentous than it was and greatly exaggerated the number of Union soldiers killed in the battle, a common reaction by both sides to battles in 1861.
Yeah, a lot of both sides they were reporting
Major loss of life!
I mean, enough, but...
Right.
At the time, the outcome of the battle was an important boost to the Southern confidence and morale, obviously. Along with the Confederate victory at the Battle of the First Bull Run, which we haven't done yet, 6 weeks later, it provided what proved to be undue encouragement and confidence in a quick victory in war to the Confederates. They're like, we can do this. Union morale was correspondingly damaged, but as events proved, the Northern public and military showed resilience and determination in the face of several early defeats. They did.
Several early defeats did they have?
Well, plus they had way more men and they had way more bullets.
Big Bethel was one of the first Civil War land battles, both in present-day Virginia and in the war after the bombardment and surrender of Fort Sumter. Although arguments have been made that either the Battle of Philippi, which we covered,
Right.
Or the Battle of Big Bethel was the first land battle of the entire war.
I think it's Bethel.
The Battle of Fairfax Courthouse
Yeah.
on June 1st, 2 days earlier than the Battle of Philippi and 9 days before the Battle of Big Bethel. Some say that was, but
I think it's Bethel.
I don't.
It's got to be Bethel.
No, it's Philippi. First of all, there was shots fired at Philippi, and they took a position, so
That's true, I guess. Land battle, though.
they were on land.
At Philippi?
Yeah, remember they snuck up to the camp, and that lady fired at him
Oh,
prematurely?
yeah. Historian David E. Aker discounts both the Battle of Fairfax Courthouse and the Battle of Philippi as mere skirmishes.
Philippi was not a skirmish.
It says the first real battle of conflict was the Battle of Big Bethel.
I mean, I guess.
Although after a brief
Right,
summary,
I guess, because this battle at Bethel was
At
you actually
deaths.
had Well, none of that. It was a battle for what, 5 hours?
Wow.
Philippi was just like they literally all just ran away.
Right. Although after a brief summary of the Battle of Big Bethel, he was characterized as the early Civil War engagements without apparent distinction as these first minor skirmishes. Basically, they're all minor skirmishes.
Right. Except for Bethel.
Right. Bethel was a battle. It was.
The Baltimore riot of April 19th, 1861 might also be considered a small Civil War battle, with several killed and wounded on each side. But the Confederate side in the affair was a civilian mob, not an organized military force like the force, obviously.
It's not.
Civilian mobs were also engaged with military forces in 2 similar riots in St. Louis in the early days of the war after the surrender of Fort Sumter. Compared to the large battles to come, all the engagements before first Bull Run are fairly characterized as mere skirmishes.
Yes, because Bull Run, you guys will see. Bull Run is, that's when everybody was like, "Whoa, this is real."
Yeah, but Bethel was clearly real.
Yeah, but this is where it's more popular. Watch. Most of the Big Bethel battlefield and the whole Little Bethel site have now been preserved.
Have not
been preserved.
Wow.
Today, the sites are generally covered with residential and commercial development.
Oh, that's trash.
Marsh Creek, or Brick Kiln Creek, also has been dammed, creating the Big Bethel Reservoir on the battlefield site. So at least they got a reservoir. The fragments of the site that remain are not readily identifiable. The site of Lieutenant Grebel's death is now a convenience store.
Oh, jeez, dude.
A group of the local preservationists has developed a plan to preserve areas currently located on Langley Air Force Base, containing a remnant of an earthwork and a memorial to Henry Lawson Wyatt, the only Confederate soldier killed in the battle.
That's not going to go very well in today's society. And sorry, Henry Lawson Wyatt. I don't think you're getting a memorial anytime soon,
right.
bud.
So they covered up that battle quick with concrete and buildings.
It did, dude. Nothing. Even the Grebel convenience store. Did they at least call it Grebel's?
Right.
Jeez.
Right.
Some kind of memorial out of that damn thing? Yeah. So that's the Battle of Pig Point, which wasn't a battle at all, and the Battle of Big Bethel. Episode 4, still moving on to our march towards Bull Run. And real casualties, as Dang said, you'll see. Coming up next week, we got 2 more battles. The battles of Boonville, which took place June 17th, 1861 in Missouri. Our first skirmish in Missouri, as far as I know. And Vienna, which was... Vienna took place in Virginia. Vienna, Virginia on June 17th as well. So we got 2 battles the same day, 2 states apart. Oh. Right. Except for the Battle of Boonville was a Class C battle, and Vienna, Virginia is not even classified as a battle. So.
Right.
And then coming up the week after that, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 battles in one episode for you guys.
Nice.
All of them little skirmishes and nothing really much happening, but it'd be Camp Cole in Missouri, Matthias's Point, Virginia, Battle of Holk's Run in West Virginia, Battle of Carthage in Missouri, Battle of Rich Mountain in West Virginia, Battle of Cork's Ford in West Virginia, and Battle of Blackburn's Ford, Virginia, before leading to Bull Run in 3 weeks' time from now.
3 weeks' time.
And all of this takes place, Big Bethel is June 10th. And from June 17th to July 21st, when Bull Run is, we have 1, 2, 3, 10 more battles. So, yeah, man, they're ramping it up. And this is only 1861, which is not really that many battles.
No.
You go to 1862, dude, holy battles, dude. There's
a lot of battles.
There's 58, 88,
1862,
93.
1862,
There's like 113 battles in 1862.
It's going to be a lot, especially 1863 and 1864.
So far, through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 battles, the Confederates have won 3, Union 1, and 3 of them have been no winners at all. So, but good for Union. They do win the Battle of Boonville next week, but lose the next 3 to the Confederates.
Right.
So, yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up forward. Oh man, next 3 weeks are going to be spectacular. Because we got the Battle of Bull Run, and then just 2 short weeks after that, the Battle of Wilson's Creek, which is a Class A battle as well, dude. So much stuff coming up on the battles of the American Civil War. We'll be back next week for the Battle of Boonville and the Battle of Vienna, Virginia. We are the Mouthy Michiganders with
the Mouthy Michiganders.
Michiganders.
Big night.